The vast hall of the Galactic Council was filled with whispers as the high-ranking leaders of the Galactic Empire gathered to discuss an issue that would reshape the future of countless star systems. Representatives from hundreds of planets, each with their own agendas and desires, all awaited the announcement that was about to be made. The mood was tense, for what the Empire had decided to do would surely have far-reaching consequences. The Emperor of the Galactic Empire, a tall figure draped in the traditional robes of his office, stood before the gathered council members. His face, etched with experience, betrayed no emotion as he prepared to address them. The holographic map of the galaxy flickered to life, showing the massive territories under the Empire's control and the vast reaches of space that were yet to be claimed. All eyes turned to the Emperor. Fellow members of the Galactic Council, the Emperor began, his voice deep and commanding. We stand at a critical moment in the history of the Empire. Our fleet has grown stronger, our influence wider, but one piece remains, one piece we must secure if we are to continue our march toward dominion. A projection of Earth appeared before them. The blue and green planet seemed almost out of place among the stars. It was a small, insignificant world compared to the giants that made up the Empire, but there was something about it that caught the eye. Earth, the Emperor continued, a planet on the edge of our reach, yet one that remains stubbornly outside of our grasp. Our scouts have reported a growing threat in their growing technological prowess, and they have yet to yield to the Empire's demands for compliance. It is time for this world to join the Empire, to open its borders to our fleets and become part of our glorious dominion. A murmur ran through the room. Representatives from the other star systems exchanged glances, some curious, others apprehensive. Earth had never been an easy target. It had resisted every attempt at conquest, holding its ground against much larger and more powerful forces in the past. But the Emperor's decision was clear. No planet could remain outside the Empire's control forever. The council members nodded in agreement, their approval given with a mix of enthusiasm and skepticism. The Empire had never faced a world like Earth, but if the Emperor said it was time to act, they would support him. That was how things worked in the Galactic Empire. Strength ruled, and if a planet refused, the consequences were swift and absolute. At the front of the room, the military leaders of the Empire stood in full armor, their faces grim as they discussed the logistics of the mission. It would not be a simple task. Earth was known for its unpredictable nature, its ability to surprise even the most seasoned warriors. But their minds were made up. The first wave will land in Earth's orbit, General Veckler, a grizzled veteran of many campaigns, said. We will begin by disabling their defenses. Once we have control, we can force their leaders to comply. They will have no choice but to join the Empire. We will offer them no mercy, added Admiral Korath, his eyes cold with the promise of conquest. Earth will fall like all the others. However, not everyone was convinced that brute force would work. From the other side of the room, a voice interrupted. It was Princess Valoria, a young but sharp-minded diplomat with the weight of the galaxy's future on her shoulders. She was not convinced that force alone would succeed in subduing Earth. I disagree, she said, standing up to address the council. Earth has shown time, and again that it will not bow to threats. We have underestimated them in the past, and we do so again at our own peril. We must explore a diplomatic solution. A moment of silence followed as the council members turned their attention to the princess. She had the Emperor's ear, but her ideas were often considered unconventional. The people of Earth have endured great hardships, Princess Valoria continued. They have fought wars, survived natural disasters, and faced dangers that would break other civilizations. If we push them too hard, they will not bend. They will fight. And when they fight with everything they have. Her words hung in the air as the council members pondered them. The Emperor stared at the projection of Earth, his mind turning over the princess's warning. The humans were an unknown factor, but they had proven resourceful. Perhaps, the Emperor thought, diplomacy could be tried, at least for a time. The time for diplomacy will come, the Emperor finally said, his voice a calm command. "But make no mistake, Earth will open its borders to the Empire. It is not a matter of if, but when." With that, the meeting was adjourned, and the council members left the room, each of them lost in their own thoughts. Some believed Earth would fall easily to the might of the Empire. Others, like Princess Valoria, were not so sure. But no matter what they believed, one thing was clear: the Galactic Empire would not be denied, and Earth's future hung in the balance. The sun rose over Earth, its golden rays casting long shadows over the bustling cities below. Yet, high above the planet, the skies were not peaceful. The Galactic Empire's fleet hovered ominously in Earth's orbit. Dozens of massive warships, their sleek forms cutting through the blackness of space, were positioned in perfect formation. The Empire had arrived, and they were not here for diplomacy. Admiral Korath stood on the bridge of the lead ship, his eyes scanning the Earth below. He had led many conquests before, but this was different. The humans on Earth were unpredictable, and that made them dangerous. He had heard stories of their ability to fight back against overwhelming odds. He had seen how the Empire's scouts had failed to gain any real intelligence about Earth's defenses. It was almost as if the planet had something to hide. He looked over at his communications officer, who was nervously monitoring the transmission channels. "Has the message been sent?" he asked, his voice cold. "Yes, Admiral. The humans have been informed of our arrival," the officer replied, his voice shaky. "They have been given an ultimatum. We expect a response soon." Admiral Korath's lips curled into a smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. He had no doubt that Earth's leaders would bend to the will of the Galactic Empire. They would have no choice. His fleet was more than enough to break any resistance they might try. On Earth, however, things were not as Korath expected. The message had arrived, but instead of the fearful trembling that the Empire had become accustomed to from lesser worlds, there was something else. Earth's leaders, led by General Helena Astor, gathered in a secure government facility. The room was filled with tension, but it was not born from fear. It was born from resolve. General Astor was a woman of few words, but her presence commanded respect. She had seen many battles, both on the ground and in the halls of government. She had faced challenges that seemed insurmountable, yet she had always found a way to rise above them. Today would be no different. "The Galactic Empire thinks we'll cower before them," General Astor said, her voice steady. "But they don't know us. They don't know what it means to be human." Her words were met with nods of agreement from her fellow leaders. The human race had faced extinction countless times, natural disasters, wars, and even the rise of monstrous adversaries. Yet, each time, humanity had adapted, had fought back, had survived. Now, Earth was facing a new threat, but this time, they would not back down. A younger officer, Lieutenant Marcus, spoke up nervously. "General, do we really stand a chance against their fleet? They have so many ships, so much firepower. Even our best military units might not be enough." General Astor turned to him, her gaze intense but understanding. "We faced impossible odds before, Marcus. The key is not in our numbers, but in our ingenuity. The Empire may have advanced technology, but we have something they don't: the will to fight for our survival." She turned to the large screen behind her, where the image of the Empire's fleet hovered in space. The massive ships were intimidating, their sleek designs a testament to the Empire's technological superiority. But General Astor wasn't afraid. The human spirit had faced worse, and this time would be no different. "We will not back down," she continued. "We will not surrender. Earth is our home, and we will defend it with everything we have. Prepare for the first step." A few days passed, and the Empire waited, expecting Earth's leaders to fold. But nothing came. No signs of weakness. No message of submission. The Empire's fleet lingered in orbit, still waiting for a response. Admiral Korath grew impatient. He knew the humans were stubborn, but he never expected them to resist so long. Finally, A message came from Earth. The text was simple, yet direct. No passage will be granted to the Galactic Empire. Any attempt to force entry will be met with resistance. Admiral Korath stared at the message, disbelief crossing his face. He read it again, then a third time, as if somehow the words would change. But they didn't. It was a challenge, and not just any challenge. It was a declaration of war. The Empire's superior forces were ready to crush any opposition. But this message made something clear. Earth would not be an easy conquest. Korath couldn't help but feel a flicker of respect for the humans. They didn't just send a message of submission, like so many other conquered worlds. They had sent a challenge. "Prepare the fleet," Korath barked, his tone cold with fury. "It seems we are not dealing with the weaklings we thought they were. But no matter how strong they are, we will break them. We will make them bend to the Empire's will." Back on Earth, General Aster and her team were already taking action. The message had been sent, and now it was time to prepare for what was to come. In deep underground bunkers, humanity's best engineers and military strategists were already working on countermeasures. The Empire might have their fleets, but Earth had something more powerful: the determination to protect what was theirs. General Aster stood before the team, her expression unwavering. "This is not just a battle for Earth. This is a battle for our future. We will show them what humanity is made of." And so, the first steps were taken. The fight for Earth had begun. The tension was thick in the air as Earth's defenses began to prepare. The Galactic Empire had given their ultimatum, and the world had stood firm, refusing to yield. In the vast command centers beneath the Earth's surface, teams of engineers and military commanders were working tirelessly, coordinating the planet's efforts to defend itself. General Aster's orders were clear: Earth would not fall without a fight. The Empire's fleet still hovered above the planet, an overwhelming presence. But humanity had faced stronger odds in the past. They had fought wars, natural disasters, and other alien forces. They had adapted and found new ways to survive, often when the world seemed like it was on the brink of destruction. Now, they were ready to do the same again. But Earth wasn't relying only on its military might. There was another force at work. On the surface, things seemed normal to the average person. People went about their daily lives, unaware of the looming threat in the skies above. But in the shadows, hidden from view, a quiet resistance had begun to take shape. Not everyone had taken the Empire's message with fear. Some had taken it as an opportunity to stand united against a common enemy. Among them was a group of civilians who had decided that they couldn't simply wait for the government to act. They were everyday people, scientists, farmers, teachers, and former soldiers, who had been quietly preparing for this moment their entire lives. They called themselves the Defenders. Maria, a former military engineer, stood in a small, dimly lit room, looking at a table covered with blueprints of old technology. Her fingers traced the lines of one particularly worn-out design, an old anti-aircraft cannon that had been discarded years ago, replaced by newer, more sophisticated technology. It was bulky and outdated, but in the right hands, it could still pack a punch. And in the right places, it could be just what Earth needed. "We can't rely solely on the military," Maria said, turning to the group gathered around her. "We need to fight back with everything we have. These cannons are outdated, but they're still functional. We can use them to defend key locations from the Empire's fleet. We just need to put them back online." The group nodded in agreement. They knew the risk. If the Empire discovered them, their lives would be over. But there was no turning back now. Maria had once been part of the military, but her job had taken a different direction. Now she was using her skills to make a stand, just like the rest of her team. Meanwhile, in the Empire's fleet, Admiral Korath was growing impatient. Earth had not submitted, and instead, their military forces had begun to mobilize. His spies had reported strange activity on the surface, unusual for a planet that had been so complacent before. But it didn't concern him. He was confident in the Empire's superiority. They would crush any resistance without breaking a sweat. "Prepare for the initial assault," Korath commanded from the bridge of his flagship. "We will show them the power of the Empire." The ships in orbit prepared for their descent. It was time to strike. Back on Earth, General Astor stood in the command center, observing the fleets in the sky. She had watched countless battles, but this one felt different. This time, it wasn't just the military that had to defend the planet. The citizens of Earth were standing up too. They were fighting for their homes, for their families, and for their future. "It's time," General Astor said, her voice steady. "We fight together. Civilians, military, everyone. We hold the line." The first wave of the Empire's ships began their descent. Massive hulking vessels dropped out of orbit, their engines blazing as they entered Earth's atmosphere. The skies grew darker as their shadows stretched across the land, and the sound of their engines could be heard from miles away. Earth's defense systems sprang to life. Anti-aircraft cannons, once abandoned in favor of more advanced technology, roared to life. Missile silos opened, launching their payloads into the sky, streaking toward the Empire's ships. The first shots were fired. A loud explosion echoed across the sky as one of the Empire's ships was hit, causing it to stagger in midair. It was only a small victory, but it was enough to show the Empire that Earth was not so easily conquered. In the small resistance hideout, Maria smiled at the radar screen. "It's working," she muttered. "We've got them off balance." Meanwhile, General Astor coordinated the military's response. Fighter jets raced into the air, engaging the Empire's ships in a fierce aerial battle. The fighters zipped and zoomed, dodging laser fire as they used the element of surprise to their advantage. The Empire's fleet was vast, but Earth had something they didn't: the element of unpredictability. Humans weren't used to playing by the Empire's rules, and they weren't going to start now. The Empire, taken aback by Earth's sudden resistance, was struggling to adapt. They had expected a world of frightened civilians, a planet easy to subdue. Instead, they were facing a united front, both military and civilian, fighting together. The Empire's superiority was no longer as certain as it had been just days ago. Admiral Korath gritted his teeth as his fleet struggled to keep up with the unexpected defenses. "This resistance will not last," he growled. "We will crush them." But deep down, he couldn't help but wonder. Could they? The battle had only just begun, but Earth was already showing the Empire that it wouldn't go down without a fight. The skies were filled with smoke and fire as the Galactic Empire's warships continued their descent, while humanity's defenses stood firm against the attack. The Empire's ships, once thought invincible, were taking unexpected hits from Earth's weapons. The first wave of missiles had damaged one of the larger ships, but now came the real test. General Astor stood in the command center, her eyes focused on the large holographic map of the battle. The Empire had underestimated Earth, and now they were paying for it. Fighter jets swooped through the air, engaging the Empire's ships in high-speed dogfights. The once silent sky had transformed into a chaotic battlefield. "It's working," said Lieutenant Marcus, watching the screens. "We're doing more damage than we expected." But General Astor didn't allow herself to smile. The battle had just started, and she knew that the Empire would come back stronger, angrier. Their fleet was far superior in size, and their tactics were ruthless. She needed more time to prepare for the next wave. "We can't let our guard down," she said, her voice firm. "Tell the ground units to stay in position and be ready for the Empire's next move. We can't afford to give them an opening." Meanwhile, on the surface, the civilians who had joined the resistance were working tirelessly. Maria and her team of engineers had successfully restored the old anti-aircraft cannons, which were now firing at the Empire's ships. It was a simple but effective measure, and it gave the defenders an advantage they desperately needed. Though the cannons were outdated, they had one thing going for them. Earth's forces knew how to use them in ways the Empire didn't expect. "This is our best shot," Maria said, wiping the sweat from her forehead as she watched the action unfold on the radar. We've got to hold them off as long as possible. Her hands moved quickly as she continued to monitor the cannons. Each blast was like a shot of hope to the defenders below. The Empire's ships were taking damage, but they were relentless. More and more of their ships were joining the fray, overwhelming Earth's defenses in some areas. Maria knew that they couldn't keep up this pace for long. They needed something more. Back in orbit, Admiral Korath's frustration grew. His fleet had taken hits, and Earth's surprising resilience was starting to show. He had expected a simple conquest, a world that would bow before the might of the Galactic Empire. But instead, Earth had dared to fight back, and that made him angry. "Push forward," Korath commanded. "They're just delaying the inevitable. Show them the full power of the Empire. We'll end this in one decisive strike." As Korath's fleet advanced, Earth's defenses scrambled to keep up. Fighter jets were dispatched into the air, their engines screaming as they engaged the enemy. But the battle was taking its toll. The pilots had already faced a fierce aerial dogfight, and now, as the second wave of the Empire's warships moved in, they were feeling the pressure. The larger Empire ships began to fire their devastating energy beams. Each blast tore through the air, slicing through fighter jets and buildings alike. But despite the overwhelming power of the Empire's attacks, Earth's forces didn't waver. Ground forces were in position, ready to provide backup if needed. The defenders, ordinary civilians turned resistance fighters, took their positions in abandoned military bunkers, preparing weapons and staying hidden. They were prepared for the worst, but they knew that they had to fight for every inch. Maria looked out at the sky, watching as explosions lit up the horizon. It was hard to believe that this was happening. Just days ago, Earth had been a peaceful world, unaware of the danger looming above them. Now, it was a battlefield, a place where ordinary people were standing together against an overwhelming force. "They think we're weak," Maria said, gritting her teeth, "but they're about to learn just how wrong they are." In the midst of the chaos, General Astor stood resolutely at her command center. She had seen her fair share of battles, but this one was different. This time, it wasn't just soldiers fighting for their lives. It was the whole planet, united. The government, the military, and the civilians who had joined the resistance were all working together. It was the spirit of humanity itself that was fighting back. "We've got to hold them off until reinforcements arrive," General Astor said. "Our allies are still on the way, and we need to make sure that we keep the pressure on the Empire. Every minute counts." She knew that the situation was dire. The Empire's fleet was enormous, and their weapons were far more advanced. But humanity had something that the Empire couldn't predict: an unbreakable will. As the battle raged on, Earth's defenders continued to put up a fight. The once hopeless feeling that the planet would fall was beginning to shift. Small victories began to add up. One Empire ship after another was struck, its shields flickering as the weapons fired from Earth's surface found their mark. It wasn't enough to stop the Empire's advance, but it was enough to show them that humanity wasn't going down without a fight. And that was all General Astor needed: the belief that humanity would never stop fighting. "Stay strong," she muttered to herself, staring out at the skies. "We're just getting started." The battle for Earth had only just begun, and while the Empire had the upper hand, humanity's resolve was something they could never account for, and that, in the end, might just be the Empire's greatest mistake. The battle over Earth was far from over, but the people of the planet had shown the Galactic Empire that they were not to be underestimated. The skies above were filled with smoke and fire, with Empire warships descending in waves, but humanity refused to back down. The fight had grown fiercer, and the planet's defenders were beginning to show the Empire just how resilient Earth could be. General Astor stood at the heart of the command center, watching as Earth's military forces fought back with all their might. The enemy fleet was vast and overwhelming, but humanity's determination was their secret weapon. The soldiers, the civilians, the engineers, all of them were working together to protect their home. "Report," Astor commanded, her voice steady but urgent. She had watched the progress of the battle, but she knew that they couldn't rest yet. The Empire was relentless, and the next wave of their attack was coming soon. Lieutenant Marcus quickly approached her. "The second wave is pushing through," he said, his eyes scanning the data on the screen. "But we're holding steady. The fighter jets are holding their ground, and the ground-based cannons are dealing damage." Aster nodded. "Good, but it's not enough. We need to keep pushing back. We can't let them take more ground." Just as she spoke, a blinding flash lit up the sky. One of the Empire's massive warships had been hit by a missile from Earth's surface. The ship shuddered as explosions ripped through its hull, sending debris flying into space. It was a major victory, but Aster knew that the Empire wouldn't be deterred so easily. On the surface, Maria and the resistance team were working at full capacity. The old anti-aircraft cannons were proving to be more valuable than they had imagined, and now they were being used to full effect. But the battle was still incredibly intense. Empire ships were firing energy beams at Earth's defenses, and fighter jets zipped through the sky, dodging blasts and returning fire. Maria's fingers danced across the control panel in front of her, coordinating with the other resistance members. She had seen how powerful the Empire's weapons were, but the people of Earth had learned to adapt and fight back. It was a struggle, but it was one they were determined to win. "We're making progress," Maria said, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. "The Empire's ships are getting slower. Their shields are weakening." "Good," said Tom, a former military officer and now one of the resistance leaders. "Let's keep the pressure on them. We need to make sure they know they're not welcome here." In the distance, another explosion shook the ground. One of the Empire's ships had been struck by a direct hit from Earth's defenses. The enemy fleet was starting to take notice of the damage they were sustaining. Back in orbit, Admiral Korath's patience was running thin. His fleet had already suffered losses, and the resistance on the surface was proving to be a serious problem. The Empire's tactical superiority had been questioned, and Korath didn't like it. His pride had been wounded, and he was determined to end this conflict swiftly. "Regroup the fleet," Korath commanded, slamming his fist down on the console in front of him. "We'll focus all firepower on Earth's key defense points. This ends now." The Empire began to shift tactics, concentrating their fire on Earth's most vulnerable defenses. The battle grew more intense as the Empire's warships lined up, preparing for a massive assault. A series of massive energy blasts lit up the sky, striking Earth's cities, military bases, and defense systems. "General, they're focusing on the capital," Lieutenant Marcus called out. "If we don't act now, they could cripple us." Aster's face tightened with determination. "Get the reinforcements in position. We'll hold the line as long as we can." Just as the situation seemed to grow more dire, something unexpected happened. A new fleet of ships, unmarked and smaller than the Empire's, arrived on the scene. They moved quickly through the chaos, their sleek forms darting between explosions. Earth's fighters took notice, and the mysterious fleet began to target the Empire's ships. "Who are they?" Aster asked, her brow furrowed. The ships had no known insignia, but they seemed to be attacking the Empire's warships with deadly precision. Maria's eyes widened as she watched the battle unfold from the surface. "Those ships, where did they come from?" "They're not ours," Tom said, his voice filled with awe. "But they're helping us. We need to keep fighting." The sudden appearance of this new fleet gave humanity a glimmer of hope. The tide of battle was turning. Earth's defenses were holding, and with the unknown fleet's help, the Empire's forces began to falter. The Empire's warships were retreating, forced to regroup after taking heavy damage. Earth had struck a significant blow. But General Aster knew that they couldn't relax just yet. The battle was far from over, and the Empire would come back with even more force. However, the sudden arrival of the mysterious fleet meant that Earth wasn't alone in this fight. They had allies, and with them, they had a real chance to win. "Keep pushing forward," Aster ordered, her voice filled with renewed confidence. "We've got them on the ropes, but we need to finish this. Stay strong, everyone. The future of Earth is in our hands." As the battle continued to rage, the people of Earth fought with everything they had. Their courage and resilience were their greatest weapons, and as long as they stood together, the Empire would never succeed. This was Earth's fight, and they would not let anyone take their world away. The skies over Earth had become a battleground. Once peaceful and clear, they were now filled with explosions and the dark silhouettes of warships. But even as the galactic empire's might loomed above, humanity's resolve was stronger than ever. The mysterious fleet had joined the fight, turning the tide of battle in Earth's favor, but the Empire was not one to surrender easily. General Aster stood at the command center, her eyes glued to the screens as she monitored the latest developments. The unknown fleet had caused a significant disruption to the Empire's forces, but they had also made themselves a target. The Empire's ships were regrouping, readying themselves for one final assault. The next few hours would determine whether Earth would stand or fall. "Report," Aster ordered, her voice calm but determined. She had seen many battles in her life, but this one was different. This was humanity's moment to prove that they would never bow to tyranny. Lieutenant Marcus quickly moved to her side. "The Empire is preparing for a large-scale assault. They're concentrating their firepower on our major defense hubs. We need to act fast if we want to hold our ground." Aster clenched her fists. "We can't let them break through. We need to protect the capital, or all is lost." On Earth's surface, Maria and the resistance fighters were in the thick of the battle. The sound of blasts and gunfire filled the air as they scrambled to defend their cities. The new fleet, which had come from nowhere, continued to engage the Empire's warships, but the resistance knew that this wasn't over yet. They had to keep the Empire distracted long enough for reinforcements to arrive. Maria ducked behind a concrete pillar as another round of enemy fire tore through the street. She watched the fighter jets fly overhead, their sleek forms darting through the smoke. Every day brought new challenges, but every day also brought new hope. They had managed to hold off the Empire this far. There was no way they were going to let them take Earth now. "Focus on the defense grid," Maria said to her team. "We can't let them breach our shields. If the capital goes down, it's over for us." Tom, one of the senior resistance members, nodded. "We've got this. Earth's not going to fall. Not today." As the resistance regrouped, they began to push back against the Empire's ground forces. Earth's military was still fighting alongside them, but it was clear that the Empire's forces were beginning to grow desperate. Their ships had been severely damaged, and their numbers were thinning. The Empire's pride had been wounded, and now they were fighting with more rage than strategy. In orbit, Admiral Korath paced in front of the large view screen, watching as Earth's defenses held firm. His fleet had suffered immense losses, and his plan to crush Earth in one swift attack had failed. The mysterious fleet had taken out several of his most powerful ships, and the battle had dragged on far longer than he had expected. It was time for a more aggressive approach. "Regroup the fleet. We're going in for the final push," Korath ordered, his voice cold and filled with anger. "Make them regret resisting the Empire." The Empire's ships began to align, preparing for their ultimate assault. They concentrated their fire on Earth's main defense systems, determined to break through and claim victory once and for all. Massive energy beams shot across the sky, and Earth's shields began to flicker under the pressure. It was a desperate attack, but it was also their last chance. General Aster stood firm, her face tense, as she monitored the incoming attacks. She had known this moment would come, and now she had to make the hardest decision of her life. Earth's shield generators were holding, but just barely. If they didn't manage to push the Empire back now, their defenses would collapse. "Lieutenant," she said, her voice sharp, "call in the last wave of reinforcements. We need everything we have." "Understood, General," Marcus replied, quickly sending the orders. "The fleet will be here in 5 minutes." 5 minutes. That's all they had. Earth's fate rested on those few minutes. Aster took a deep breath, her mind racing through every possibility. There was no room for failure. If they couldn't hold off the Empire in the next 5 minutes, Earth would fall. On the ground, Maria watched as the battle unfolded. The Resistance had managed to push back the Empire's forces, but they could feel the pressure building. Every soldier, every civilian, was fighting not just for survival, but for the future of Earth. Maria could see it in their eyes. They would not give up. They couldn't. "We have to keep fighting," she said, turning to her team. "We're almost there. Just a little longer." Tom nodded, determination written on his face. "We're with you, Maria. We fight until the end." As the final wave of Empire ships approached, General Aster watched the screens with bated breath. The unknown fleet had managed to hold off the Empire's attack long enough for Earth's reinforcements to arrive. They were close, so close to turning the tide for good. The Empire was losing its grip. Their ships were weakening, their resources stretched thin. And yet, Admiral Korath continued to push forward, ignoring the cost. It was the Empire's way: destroy everything to claim victory. But Earth had something the Empire could never understand: the will to survive. With the last wave of reinforcements now in position, Earth's defenders launched their final offensive. Fighter jets and ground forces, united like never before, pushed back against the Empire's overwhelming might. The battle wasn't over, but Earth was no longer fighting alone. They were fighting with the strength of unity. In space, the unknown fleet launched a devastating strike on the Empire's flagship. Its shields collapsed under the pressure, and the ship began to spiral out of control. It was a sign. Earth had turned the tide, and the Empire's grip on the planet was slipping. The battle wasn't won yet, but it was only a matter of time now. The skies above Earth were a mess of chaos and destruction. The Empire's final assault was fierce, but it was clear that their grip on the planet was slipping. For every Empire ship destroyed, for every soldier who fell, humanity fought harder. The final battle had arrived, and Earth's defenders, despite their odds, were holding their ground. General Aster stood on the bridge of the command center, her eyes scanning the screens. The Empire had been relentless, but their forces were growing weaker. Their ships, once shining symbols of dominance, were now battered and damaged, retreating from the front lines. Earth's reinforcements had arrived, and the tide had officially turned. "General," Lieutenant Marcus called out, "the unknown fleet is giving their all. The Empire's flagship is down to half its power. It's only a matter of time before it falls." Aster's face hardened. She had known the battle would come to this. The unknown fleet, a mysterious force that had appeared out of nowhere, had been a surprise ally, one that Earth hadn't expected but welcomed with open arms. Their firepower had been crucial, pushing the Empire to its limits. Now, Earth's last push would determine everything. "Keep the pressure on," Aster ordered. "We finish this now." On Earth's surface, Maria and the Resistance fighters were pushing forward with the same fierce determination. The Empire's forces had been pushed back to their landing zones, and the Resistance had gained control of the majority of the city. But they weren't finished yet. The Empire's ground forces were still strong, and they knew the final battle was not over until every enemy soldier was defeated. Maria crouched behind a large pile of rubble, her rifle raised, as she aimed at the last of the Empire's advancing troops. The air was thick with smoke, and the once bustling city had turned into a war zone. But Maria didn't care. Every person who stood beside her, whether human or alien, was fighting for one thing: Earth's survival. "Take them out," Maria shouted, her voice carrying over the noise of the battle. Her team moved swiftly, firing at the remaining Empire soldiers. The Empire had underestimated Earth's will to fight, but now, as they neared the final stretch of the battle, it was clear they had made a fatal mistake. Humanity had rallied like never before, pushing back against the invaders with all their might. Tom, one of Maria's closest allies, moved beside her, firing at an enemy officer who was trying to organize the Empire's last line of defense. "We're almost there. Just a little more," he said, his face set in a grim line. Maria nodded, her eyes focused. "They won't stop unless we do." Above them, in space, the Empire's remaining warships were retreating. Their once proud fleet was a shadow of its former self, with broken ships drifting in space. The unknown fleet was relentless, ensuring that no escape was possible. Admiral Korath, in his flagship, watched in horror as his forces crumbled under the assault. He had underestimated humanity, and now he was paying the price. "Admiral," his first officer said, "the flagship is losing power. The fleet is in disarray. We can't hold out much longer." Korath's face twisted with anger. "No, we will not retreat. Push forward. Earth will bow to the Empire." But it was too late. The mysterious fleet, allied with humanity's defenders, continued its assault. The Empire's remaining warships had no chance against the combined force of Earth's military and the unexpected allies who had come to their aid. One by one, the Empire's ships were obliterated, and their forces on the ground were overwhelmed. Maria's heart raced as she saw the last of the Empire's soldiers surrender. The battle was over. Earth had won. "General," Marcus's voice crackled through her comms. "The Empire's flagship has been destroyed. We've won." Maria couldn't help but smile, even though exhaustion weighed heavily on her. "It's over," she whispered to herself. "We did it." The battle was done, but the war was far from over. Humanity had proven that no matter the odds, no matter the challenge, they would never give up. The Empire had come to Earth, believing it would be an easy conquest, but they had underestimated the strength, the unity, and the resilience of humankind. As Maria looked over the ruined city, she felt a deep sense of pride. They had fought for their home, for their families, for their future, and they had won. The unknown fleet, their mysterious allies, had ensured victory, but it was humanity's courage that had carried them through the fight. General Astor stood tall, her eyes scanning the horizon as the last of the battle faded. The Empire had lost, and Earth had held firm. They had repelled the most powerful empire in the galaxy. "We've shown them what humanity can do," Astor said to her team, a rare smile breaking through her usually serious demeanor. "This is our victory." As the skies began to clear, Earth's people gathered together. There were no grand celebrations, no explosions of joy, just quiet relief. They had survived, and now they had the future to rebuild. The galaxy would remember what had happened here. Earth had stood against the Empire, and Earth had won. And so, the story of humanity's victory would live on, not just as a tale of war, but as a testament to the strength of the human spirit. Earth had faced the greatest challenge it had ever known and had come out on top. The Galactic Empire had been forced to retreat, and Earth had proved that no force in the universe could crush their will to survive. Humanity had shown that no matter the challenge, no matter the enemy, Earth would always stand tall. And with that, the last battle was over. Earth had won.